und dann musste ich hier noch.
Okay.
Okay, we are live. Looks like.
We are.
Are we?
Exciting.
Yes, we are. Exciting, exciting, exciting. Good. So, welcome to another round of Bubbly Business Talk with the wonderful Philipp and myself, drinking champagne while talking about, what are we talking about today?
Today, cheers, we'll be talking about basically the thing that has happened to almost everyone in the tech sector over the past couple of months, meaning that not only are we working remotely, but it also means that when we join a new job, when we have new people onboarding into our teams, it all has to happen remotely now. So no more welcome committees, no more office tours. So what do we do instead? And yeah, maybe it makes sense to just briefly go through our own experiences, because I just ran through it all yesterday, and I think we've actually, between the two of us, covered all the different types of onboarding from all different perspectives. So we both at some point in our lives worked at Mozilla, which is a very distributed company. So we experienced being onboarded into that distributed remote setup ourselves before there was a pandemic. So when, travel and stuff like that was still an option. I was a hiring manager at Mozilla for a while, so I onboarded people into that scenario. And Thomas recently started a new job during the pandemic at XING Events. So he has been onboarded remotely there. And at my current job at Freeletics, I've also had the pleasure to welcome a couple of new people to the team during the pandemic, onboarding some of them remotely from Munich, and also all the way from other continents, from cities like Seattle.
Yeah, so my question is actually, the topic for today is onboarding and being onboarded remotely. I would like to start with onboarding remotely. I mean, we have experiences from both sides, but the first experience chronologically is actually being onboarded remotely. So what was how often have you been onboarded remotely, and what was your experience? What can you recall, Phil?
Yeah, I've only had that experience once in my life so far, and that was at Mozilla, and that was pre-pandemic times. So I was working remotely from Munich. Mozilla doesn't have an office here, and so I think the first week I just spent basically setting things up in my home office and so forth. But then the second or third week, I think, of my gig there, I actually traveled to the office in Toronto, where a large part of the team was, and had an in-person onboarding, meeting a lot of people there, getting to know a lot of the culture directly. So yeah, it definitely was a different experience than I think people have nowadays, where it's just like you cannot see people in person, or at least not as easily. How was your experience at XING Events? Because basically that is what I just described, where right now you can't meet anyone, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, for me, the experience was my third time being onboarded remotely. The first two times as a consultant, right? So I joined Mozilla for a project, and then I joined Arduino for a project. And then finally as an employee at XING Events. So for me, at least, it was not completely new. I already had that experience. Plus, what was really good is basically to have the technology and the space already available, right? So I was prepared by having a better internet connection, a good microphone, like before that I had a nice headset, a better web camera. So at least like the setting for working remotely from a technology level was set. At XING Events, they sent me a MacBook over like my working computer. This was different than being a consultant. But then in general, yeah, the good thing is you have one spokesperson in the beginning, right? Someone from HR who helps you to get on board, someone from IT who helps you to get technically on board, which is a little bit different than being a consultant, because as a consultant, you are not embedded in the system. You are still kind of like influencing the whole thing from the outside, which has its pros and cons. So the good thing is you don't have to care about all the organizational policies and this kind of stuff, because you're just the consultant. While at XING or at the company where you work for, of course, you have to go through the, I would say, like the onboarding rituals, right? So listen to HR, to the processes, how we follow, talk with your report, talk with the other manager peers, and try to understand like how does the organization work, who's responsible for what. And yeah, that's, I would say, the main difference. And what helped me is actually that I had a very specific project from the beginning, right from the start, which was actually to set up an ad hoc team from different kinds of parts of the organization. So it was a win-win situation. This helped me to learn more about the organization and whom I should ask to get which resources. And then on the fly, setting up this project and actually contributing to the company already. And also like sharing my insights with the other management peers, which also gave me a chance to learn them a little bit better and like what kind of like perspectives they have.
Yeah, you just reminded me of one kind of onboarding ritual that I haven't done it myself, but actually, you know him, Marcus, one of our friends, he kind of came up with this, and I've been recommending it to everyone since, is to basically spend your first 1 or 2 weeks in onboarding, like starting with a list of, maybe a very short list of people that you should talk to, maybe some of your peers, maybe some of the, I don't know, other department heads or people that you'll work with. Just have short 30-minute or so one-on-one onboarding sessions with them, just to get to know them. And then at the end, ask the question, who else should I be talking to? Or tell me about 3 people who I should also get to know. And that has been a great way, I think, for people to work their way through the company and get some, you know, one-on-one FaceTime that you would normally get maybe in a coffee kitchen or something like that. Get that remotely, get that virtually. And I mean, this differs between companies, but usually I think the first week or 2, there's not that high of a workload yet. So this time is normally really, really well spent in just having a lot of one-on-one conversations, just taking it all in. You'll hear a lot of stuff multiple times, but I think that's a good thing, because it helps you figure out, okay, what is really important, because everyone is saying it, what is really part of the company culture, and what are the things that are maybe slightly more obscure or maybe more isolated to just one team.
This is what currently is happening to me, actually, that I probably, because of having this project right away, I missed some of the opportunities to just have like a lean back 101 discussion with the management peers and with my reports, to just like understand what they are looking for, what their goals are, where the company is heading. But I'm doing this basically now, like after the whole big first project, which was like super urgent, is over. So the good thing is that I already learned more about them and the company and the vision by actually conducting a quick research project, and yeah, I think it was again like a win-win situation. But yeah, I'm currently figuring out more about this thing.
Yeah. Maybe there's a question that is very suited to your situation, Thomas, because it's still fresh for you, from JD in the chat. What made you feel you really arrived in the team, and why?
That's a very good thing. Very good question, by the way. What made me feel arrived was there were 2 points. The first point was when the project actually started. I've set up my my team like very quickly, in between like 1 week and then the week after we were already starting to collaborate. This was a powerful moment when we were together on a whereby chat, working on Miro, like putting post-its from left to the right together, discussing it and so on. So this was the first moment. And the second moment was when the project was over. So this was just a 3-week project. So after the 3 weeks, we came to a conclusion. It was very intense time working together. And after this 3 weeks, I was presenting this to the rest of the company and received very good feedback. So this for me basically was the moment where I said, okay, looks like now I'm here, right? So first project already over. So I would highly recommend this compared to other onboarding experiences I had, that you start with a very small project in the beginning, so you can already like mark your territory, or right, just like put or you just leave something there. You put something on the table and say, this is what I contributed. And as soon as you contributed your first project, it's already kind of like milestone checked, right? So this was my first contribution to the organization. And this should not take too long. This is just a very quick project. And in best case, it's a project where you have to work across the units. So everyone kind of like gets a gist of how it's probably could feel like working with this guy more often.
Yeah, that's probably a good piece of advice for any type of onboarding, not just remote onboarding, to plant your flag a little bit inside the company.
What I really liked, by the way, is from a company where I was working before at Ride. We had a new UX designer onboarding, and what she was doing is actually she called it a listening tour. So what she did, she asked, so similar what you said, Phil. She asked different kind of stakeholders in the company, like who are interesting people to talk to, and then just giving them a set of questions, kind of like internal research, like where do you see our company right now? What's our biggest challenge? What are our biggest opportunities right now? And what do you believe can I do to make this thing better? And then she was just talking to, I think, like 8, 9, 10 different kind of people, and made a report out of it and presented this to the company. Like this was also like a good, not only good for her, but also good for the company, that there's a new influence coming from outside, kind of like putting the mirror into your face. So like, this is how your organization thinks about the organization. I really like this kind of format of a listening tour. Can also highly recommend that.
Yeah, I only viewed this so far from the perspective of the new joiner to get to know the company, but yeah, I mean, at the same time, the unbiased experiences that someone joining a company has are extremely valuable, and they will be gone after, I don't know, a month or 2. So the more you can get out of that, the better. And actually, Eric is asking in the chat, are there explicit professional and personal sessions for the onboarding? Since there is no coffee machine chat, how do you really connect with your team? I can maybe answer that partially with regards to how we're doing it right now with onboarding new people during the pandemic onto the Freeletics UX team. So yes, there are explicit professional and personal onboarding sessions. I think they're maybe not necessarily split into professional and personal, but are for the most part kind of both. yeah, I think a big part of that is actually what Thomas just mentioned, this type of listening tour, because when you talk to a lot of people one-on-one, then you get to know them. They start telling you stories, especially when you're a curious individual. And I think really as a new joiner, the information that you need going in is, who is everyone and in what order should I prioritize interacting with them, because you're not going to run into people, so you have to create those moments yourselves. But from that moment on, what certainly is happening is that new joiners have to be a lot more proactive and independent in getting to know the company, because yeah, like if you're just sitting in front of your desk, then no one will know that you're there. There are some things that we do to mitigate that, like everyone's announced on Slack, everyone's announced via email, everyone is announced in the company all hands, which is now a 200-person video meeting, which is kind of fun. So there's a good chance that people hear the name of new joiners a couple of times, that they see their faces. Also, at this company size, it's also not like 10 new people are starting every week, so the volume is fairly low. But yeah, I think in a certain way, remote work and working in a distributed team makes it really clear how, or let me say this differently. Working in a distributed team amplifies all the problems that you already have when working as an in-person team, that are maybe paved over a little bit or masked by the fact that all these in-between interactions happen. So it really puts, I think, a magnifying glass in front of these little issues. So, for example, if you have no culture of proactive communication, if you have no culture of team celebrations or stuff like that. Someone just mentioned team coffee chats on the chat. I think that's also a really good way on the team level to get someone accustomed to the culture. We just had a session where yesterday for the last hour of work time, we just as a team played Drawful for an hour together. So yeah, those moments are really precious now.
I really like what you're saying about that. It amplifies the issues you had already. I would really I second this. What I want to say is, like, from XING perspective, we do have like virtual kitchen and something like that at Slack, where I learned about many other companies have similar things, like the virtual water cooler, or I don't know, the virtual party hub or something, where you meet at Friday evening after work and then have a beer and just talk, which is very important. And I personally have to be very very much aware of that this is one of my weak points, that to really like push myself to like, okay, I have to do those like casual interactions as well, right? So you have to schedule it and you have to actively do it and just talk. And what my personal issue is with that I, for some reason, feel guilty, because it's not like, it sometimes doesn't feel like really contributing to a specific project or contributing to a specific goal, which makes the product better. But it improves the communication, and sometimes so this is something I personally had to learn. I don't know about you, Phil. Is there something where you struggled with, or where you really, or you're still struggling with? You have to kind of like push yourself a little bit to be more, whatever it is.
Yeah, actually, let me maybe look at this from the other perspective, because one of the really hard things as a manager when you're onboarding someone new into your team remotely is that there can be this sense of, where is this person? Is everything okay? Are they still alive? I don't know. We don't have this relationship established yet where where I just know that oh, okay, silence means I'm just working on stuff and so forth. So that is something that is still really hard for me to basically have the right interpretation of non-communication. Not only, but especially with new joiners who with whom the relationship doesn't exist yet. And it's not that I'm afraid that people are just sitting in their hammocks slurping cocktails all day, but it's just like, are you blocked? Are you do you know where you can have the biggest impact right now? Do you know how to start things and so forth? One thing that has been quite helpful here is actually a colleague of mine, one of the managers on my team, created this really, really great Google Doc that's just running through all the people you should meet, how all the things work, how all the software works, and so forth. And in some sections, it has check marks next to it, so you can kind of see people running through that, which is also really nice as a kind of status for, okay, what can I expect this person to know at this point? And yes, you can not communicate.
How from a technical perspective, is there any good tool, or how are you doing this, or where is this knowledge saved and accessible?
Yeah, for us it's Google Docs, because for us everything is Google Docs. But I mean, I'm sure you could do that. You could probably do something like that in, I don't know, Asana or Basecamp or Confluence probably. But yeah, I think the other tool really matters much less than the content does. Of course, if the tool, if you have to hack the tool like crazy to make it work for you, but I think any of the tools that we just mentioned would do fine for that. But and actually, it's even as someone who's been at a company for a while, it was really interesting for me to read through that document and then adopt it for other new joiners in figuring out, oh, hey, there's a ton of stuff that people should know about in various positions. So yeah, it's a good reminder of just how much complexity there might be.
Just for example, what was my major learning from working for Mozilla, and basically this project was very interesting, that we so I was not working on Firefox or something like that. It was just actually a tool for the company themselves. And what I learned there is the power of an org chart. I'm recently discovering this at XING Events, and I had the same thing at Arduino, and I was reading some articles about it, that actually a good org chart, which is not only about reporting structures, but also visualizes a little bit more how actual collaboration happens. So who are interesting players you should be aware of. Some just want to know about stuff, just some are really good for collaborating. You need them to work together with you. So kind of like a stakeholder map in addition is something which is really helpful. And I learned to actually do this every time I come to a new project or a company. I haven't found a company which is having a good org chart yet. Every time I came, whether there was none, something in Workday which is not really like visualizing how it really works, or something hacked together which is also not visualizing how the company really works. So I always had to do it myself. So I went to Miro, opened up the board and mapping out where people belong, and then talking with those people about it, like how does the organization work. And for me personally, this is very helpful. And there are several articles about the importance of a good up-to-date org chart. For example, so that you know where people are, then also like people coming new to the company, where like open spots or open roles to be filled, and also where are people dropping out. And at Mozilla, I was talking to an HR manager, and she said this is one of their onboarding rituals. She spends half an hour just to go through the org chart with new employees to explain them like, okay, this is where those people sit, this is where those people sit. These are probably interesting for you, these are less interesting for you, and this is how it all interconnects. Like, look at the map. And I found this super helpful.
Yeah, I think org charts have a bad reputation that they don't really deserve. I think maybe it's because of things like, don't ship the org chart and so forth, that the whole name has a bit of a fishy taste to it. But no, I
call it
totally
org
agree.
map.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. It's the place where all the people are listed, and you have at the very least a little bit of context around them with regards to what is their title, which ideally should tell you something about what the hell they're doing here, and what team are they in, which should also tell you something about them. Of course, it doesn't tell you all of the story, but it tells you more of the story than not looking at anything. So yeah, it's a great place to start. And actually, now that you mention it, I just did this with a new joiner at Freeletics, to spend half an hour to just basically go through your org chart and be like, this team does that, this team does that, those teams collaborate like that. And maybe it wasn't in there, but at least with a little bit of time, it could be enriched with that kind of information really well.
I'm just looking at the time. We have 2 more minutes left until I have to head to the next meeting.
Likewise.
Of course. Maybe one last question or something. Let's take a look at the
So JD is asking, are there some rarely known don'ts from your perspective? And I would interpret that as either from the perspective of a manager or from the perspective of a new joiner. So I think I can maybe start from the perspective of a manager, and this is hinting on something that I said earlier already, is don't interpret silence as anything other than silence, because you don't know the person yet, you don't have the context to really judge them without them being in the room. I mean, that's never a good thing to do, but especially when you don't know them. So yeah, I would say you can be so for me, it's always hard because I'm trying to deliberately not micromanage. So I always feel a little bad when I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Hey, how are you doing? Hey, what's going on? But at the same time, it's these very frequent communications in the very beginning that help you establish a bit of rapport, that also maybe help a new joiner get to know you better and what's important to you. And then you can always talk about, hey, is this cadence okay, or is this hindering more than it's helping?
What I learned is basically that or some don'ts is actually again, maybe your tools, or you're not aware of tools of visualization. So Miro became my go-to tool to visualize any kind of stuff remotely and give people access. And almost, so in in-person meetings, I do also a lot of sketching and kind of like making things in my head visual and then talking about it, no matter what it is. And then in those times I do it on Miro. But in general, I would say a don't, but this is a general don't. So it has nothing to do with remote or not remote. In general, visualizing what's going on in your head and not just talking. That is something I found very like a big no-go. And I have seen this in the past a lot of times, meetings where you just talk, and about trying to explain things going on in your head with, like, I don't know, hands and and gestures and whatever. But still, our people don't really get it. And yeah, just use some tools to visualize what's going on in your head, really get an alignment. So being aligned in remote really requires also tools to support your communication by adding a visual layer to that. So that's a very important thing to do. And if you don't do it, then I would say it's a no-go. Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Cool. Well, excellent closing words. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and let's start our day and go to our next meetings.
Yes. I already received a call. Bye-bye. Cheers.